So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have enjoyed watching the previous video tutorial. I know I made a lot of zoom, so you have seen everything on the face. You have seen every brush stroke, you have seen how I've painted and why. So if you enjoyed watching the previous video tutorial, it's a pleasure to me. So on this one, I would like to show you something different and how to remove your fears when you are painting freehands. I know something inside of you, when you hear the word freehand, it's like, oh, I can do it. Yes, you can do it. So I would like to show you some tricks to paint them. For example, in that model, if you remember, I tried to bring something different, and I've painted this orc with these orange colors and more like a 2D than like a 3D. So for that reason, I was painting inside of the wrinkles or inside of the folds with a light, just to draw everything as I like it. And because I would like to paint something else, in that case, I decided to paint this kind of freehand. If you see, it's really simple. It just are forms, easy forms or shapes to make it. And just you have to understand that you can do it as you like it. You don't have to copy this, exactly this. If you remember another models that I've painted, I had a process to come here. For example, I was painting another kind of orcs with kind of stippling on the skin or like dots to represent something on the skin. And now, after these old models, I decided to bring something different, and I decided to get something like that, with something more powerful, like with more information. Why? Because paint just tiny dots at the beginning to me was like, oof, maybe if I paint just one or two would be okay. Maybe if I painted more, could be weird. So you need to paint something to understand if you like it or not. If you like it, on the next project, try to do something else, paint more dots, more freehands on the model. If you did it well, in the next one, try to do a bit more. If you want to paint a different freehand, more difficult, like, I don't know, like a drawing, you can do it. But my idea with this kind of freehands, it's give you different tools, new tools, to represent an easy freehand on your models. Because sometimes you have a lot of information on your model, for example, on the cloth. You painted with a lot of contrast, with a lot of details, you like it, but you think that if you add something else will be better. So if you feel that, maybe if you add an easy freehand will be better. So, but you can feel stress about that. So you need to do something easy, because this is your hobby, this is to enjoy. Don't be frustrated when you're painting. So if you see, my idea with this is have more control on my brush strokes. I don't want to have loose brush strokes. I want to draw some lines to define or draw the form I wanted and just paint inside. And if in this area it's tiny or is smaller than I thought, it's just paint from inside to outside to draw again something bigger, just that. And you will have something like this. So for that reason, I've painted the wrinkles with the light inside, not to represent that volume, to build up different volumes or bigger or higher. My idea was paint inside to define better these forms, these ideas, this freehand. As you see with the brushstroke, it's just draw some lines and paint inside, something like that. You will have a clean surface, you will have a clean freehand, and it's more interesting that if you have a loose brushstroke or your freehand looks like a shark teeth on some parts, like missing brushstrokes. So be careful with that. You have to paint the detail, paint the freehand and then paint inside, just to cover everything well. Then after that, if you feel that you need to add layers, you need something else, more information inside, you can do it after painted everything. This is like a new base coat to this freehand. And then if you like it, it's like, okay, I like it. I don't need to add something else. But maybe at the end, to paint, when you have painted everything, you feel that you need something else, like in my case. So I'm going to show you how to continue improving that in the next video tutorials. But remember, step by step, I want to give you everything in the easiest way to teach you as better as possible. For example, this is really important. Remember, when you are painting, don't worry about something like this. It's a tiny detail, so don't worry. It's like, okay, I've painted the horns or the bones, and then if I have something like this rope, just paint it with a new base coat, with a new color, just that. And then will be the moment to start to paint the horns. Before to paint them, because I'm going to show you in this video tutorial, remember that if you started with your airbrush at the beginning, maybe now you need more depth on your shadows, on your deepest shadows. So for that reason, you have to draw again in some places some dark tones. I know that sometimes I explain you that if you start with a shadow and just go up, will be easier. For sure, will be easier. But if you feel in some moments that you need more definition, more contrast, it's just paint another layer, just that. The most important is, if you feel that, it's because you know that if you add in some places more contrast, will be better. So this is how you have to do it, just that. Paint now with your brush these new dark tones, and then, because I explained you that you have to add all the shadows with your airbrush, it's the moment to reinforce that shadows and blend over that. And because I would like to show you how to blend with your brush to give you more tools to your models, I'm blending now with my brush on the skin, some places. How you have to do it? Remember, as I explained you with the airbrush, you have to start from the mid-tone going to the shadow. With the brush strokes to blend with these glazes, you have to do exactly the same, but in that case with your brush. But in that case, don't do the typical dilution as I explained you in your airbrush. Don't use 90% water and 10% paint, because you will need a lot of time, you will waste your time, and you can get the same results than when you use the airbrush, because it's faster, quickly, and you will have better surface. So use a mix like 50-50 or 60% water and 40% paint, and just paint some brush strokes to blend as a glazes, just that. And then, for sure, I recommend you use the airbrush to continue blending in the places where you feel that you can do it. For that reason, we only will blend on the skin, on that model. The rest of the model, I'm going to explain you how to do it, these glazes, with your brush, just that. But in that case, because it's a huge surface and we have painted at the beginning, I think we can blend with airbrush, easy, quickly, without fears. And remember how I use the trigger. I pull back and I pull front. This is the idea, just to blow air or spray paint. Just that. If you feel that you can dry the surface with your airbrush, my tip that I can give you is paint one glaze over one place and move to a different one, paint another glaze, then move to a new one, paint another glaze, and then when you feel that the first one it's more or less dried or it's completely dried, it's the moment to paint another layer there. Don't try to paint over a wet surface, because it's the moment when you will paint spiders. If your model can't absorb everything because it's completely wet, it's the moment when you paint the spiders. If it's clean, if it's completely dried, you can blend 3, 4, 7, 10 times perfectly. But the problems appear when you try to blend over a place completely wet or more or less wet. How you feel is if it's wet, because will be shiny, okay? If it's like glossy, it's because it's wet. Less when you use inks, for sure. This tip it's only when you paint with acrylic colors. Acrylic colors like matte colors or satin colors. If you are trying to paint with glossy colors or inks, be careful because my tip won't work. So as you see, you can blend on the face with the airbrush too. You can add different colors that I recommend you. For example, if you are blending over this orange or these browns, you can decide to add more orange in some places, more red, maybe green, maybe violet. Be careful with the blues, because if you have browns with orange or orange, the blue is the complementary color. So you will desaturate everything. And maybe the result will look more like a gray than like a brown or orange. So be careful. For that model, with these colors, I don't recommend you use blues. For example, violet that have blue, it's okay because have magenta inside. If this violet have more magenta or purple have more magenta, it's better than if have more blue. And this is the way to do it. Just with the trigger, moving to back to front, blowing air, spraying paint, and just painting the glazes like that. As you see, I paint one layer in one place and I move to another one, just to keep the model drying. Enough time to paint again on a dried surface. For that reason, you can see that I'm moving the model every time. So this is the violet I used, and I reinforce the shadow to have more depth in some places. Remember that first I've painted with my brush in some places to reinforce that shadow, but I need to add something else with my airbrush, or at least blend between the brushstroke I've painted and the midtone. If in some moments you feel that you have painted with more than you should paint it, you have painted in some places that you didn't paint it, or you have bring down the light and you need to recover this light, will be easy. Just paint with glazes or another capibase. It's depend of how you have painted. Going to the light again on the places that you feel that you need something else higher, just that. But in that case, I recommend you always your brush. Remember, when you are painting, going to the light, use your brush. And when you are going to the shadows, you are painting something darker, you have two options. If you want more precise, you want to aim perfectly where you want, use your brush. But if are small areas, if are bigger, I recommend you the airbrush. And for sure, the airbrush. To me, use both, work with both, with the airbrush and your brush. I think is the best. Because sometimes you need to use your brush, for sure. But as you see, I've painted practically 90% with my airbrush. Why? Because it's bigger, because it's quickly to me, for that. But because I want to give you more tools, for sure I'm going to show you how to blend with your brush. And I'm going to use the rest of the parts, less the skin. Oh. I show you how to blend on the skin too, with your brush and with your airbrush. But the rest of the parts or the stuffs from this model I'm going to blend with my brush. And this part, these horns, to me are really, really interesting, and I would like to show you everything. Because sometimes when you feel that you have to paint something like that, you always check the same. You see some models with horns and you copy just that. And you paint with a perfect gradient, completely smooth, and this is a horn to you. So because I want to give you something else, I'm going to show you how to paint horns with a texture. That means it's not an stippling. I've decided to paint on this way. And I was finding information on Google or Bugs how works the horns. Because maybe in your mind you think the horns from an elephant or from a bull, but maybe there are more animals. So if you found information from horns on Google, it will be easier to you to understand what do you want. Because sometimes if you only understand the horns from a bull, maybe you don't like them. Maybe you couldn't find something that you like it. So for that reason, I recommend you first, if you don't know what kind of animals have horns, first search on Google animals with horns, and maybe will appear a lot of them that you don't know them, or maybe you know them but you couldn't imagine that the horns looks like on the pictures. So for that reason, I was finding a lot of information about that to bring you different horns, because in that case that model have a lot of them. So if I painted all of them exactly the same, to my taste it's completely boring. So because maybe you will paint the first two or the first three exactly the same and will be okay, but then will be like, oh man, Sergio, please, how I can paint this faster, because I have to paint 10 more. So maybe you're boring about that. So for that, please find information on Google, find different kind of horns, and you will check them and you will see which one you like it and which one you don't like them. And you can make a mix. So for that reason, you will see on that model everyone completely different, or more or less different. You can paint them from the same animal, but maybe you can do different nuances to have something completely new. Just that. For example, in that case, if you see, I didn't paint it with a perfect smooth gradient from the top to the bottom, the typical horn, right? I tried to create like a marble between light, shadow. Because I was checking this stuff on Google and I found a lot of them. Some of them really interesting, like this one, and some of them I don't like them. For example, if you have this kind of texture, like lines, like dots, will look more like a raw horn, like he take out from the animal some hours before. Or if you paint it with a perfect smooth surface, with a perfect gradient, maybe will look like was polished. More like someone was the hunter get the horn and was polishing the horn. So to my taste, to this model, I don't like them. For example, if this model it's more like a sci-fi, maybe you can paint some of them like plastic, like for example with red or with yellow, like a plastic material. But for this one, more like a medieval orc, it's not my taste. So I decided to paint them more like this, with like old horns, like raw horns. And I was checking different animals to bring something different, just to show you. And in that case, if you see this texture is like in some places I was painting with lines, some places with dots, and then in the next layer maybe I flip this idea or I continue working on the same place, but as I explained you with the gradients, going to the middle, going to the center, going to a small area to have the gradient. And remember, this is just with my brush going to the light. Remember that then I'm going to explain you how to blend this and how to add more contrast, how to use inks too, for example. But check this, because I've decided how to create the texture. The texture is a tool that will be perfect to represent everything, because you can design a lot of kind of textures. You don't have to paint always with stippling. Stippling is just one type of texture. You have a lot of them. You have to check the material and see how you like it, and then paint it. Just that. If you are feeling that all the horns should be like white or ivory, as you see, this is not my idea, and I want to bring you something different, just to break your ideas and bring you more and more new tools. I was enjoying painting all of these horns because are really great models. So give you a perfect background to work as you like it. So, and after say all of this, I have to say goodbye. See you in the next video tutorial, and I hope you have enjoyed watching this one and you will enjoy watching the next ones, because as you see, this new way to do the video tutorials I think will be better. We do more zoom, we explain more interesting tips. So if you have enjoyed, I hope you will enjoy all the process. Once time again, thank you very much, and see you in the next video tutorial. Bye bye.